The Nature of Personal Reality by Jane Roberts. Chapter 3, Suggestion, Telepathy, and the Grouping of Beliefs. And before I read this chapter, I'd like to remind you of a couple of things. The first is that Seth is actually speaking through Jane. Jane is married to Robert Butts. Seth sometimes addresses Jane by her soul name, which is Rupert. And Rupert is a masculine name. And Seth will talk about her as he. He addresses Rob sometimes as Joseph, which is his soul name. Okay. Now, if you read the Seth books, you'll notice that a lot of them, the sessions are interspersed with observations and footnotes from Rob. And these are wonderful. These are very, very helpful in reading the book and everything. But they do interrupt the flow of what Seth is saying. So what I'm going to do is, instead of reading it with all those all those comments by Rob interspersed into it, I'm going to read it purely the way Seth said it. And then after that, I'm going to read Rob's observations. And I've got to say, I love Rob's observations because, in reading many, many of the Seth books, I've fallen in love really with Jane and Rob and their relationship and their story. And so I love all those personal aspects. But they do interrupt, so I'm going to read it just the way Seth said it. All right, here we go. Chapter 3, Suggestion, Telepathy, and the Grouping of Beliefs. Ideas have an electromagnetic reality. Beliefs are strong ideas about the nature of reality. Ideas generate emotion. Like attracts like. So similar ideas group about each other and you accept those that fit in with your particular system of ideas. The ego attempts to maintain a clear point of focus, of stability, so that it can direct the light of the conscious mind with some precision and concentrate its focus in areas of actuality that seem permanent. As mentioned in Chapter 1, the ego, while a portion of the whole self, can be defined as a psychological structure, composed of characteristics belonging to the personality as a whole, organized together to form a surface identity. Now, generally speaking, through the period of a lifetime, this allows for the easy emergence of many tendencies and abilities. It permits many more potentials to emerge than would otherwise be possible. If this were not the case, for example, your interests throughout your life would not change. The ego, while appearing to be permanent, then, forever changes as it adapts to new characteristics from the whole self and lets others recede. Otherwise, it would not be responsive to the needs and desires of the entire personality. Because it is intimately connected with other portions of the self, it does not basically feel alienated or alone, but proudly acts as the director of the conscious mind's focus. It is an adjunct of the conscious mind in that respect. Basically, it understands its source and its nature. It is the portion of the mind, then, that looks out upon physical reality and surveys it in relation to those characteristics of which it is composed at any given time. It makes its judgments according to its own idea of itself. It is the most physically oriented portion of your inner self, but it is not, however, apart from your inner self. It sits on the windowsill, so to speak, between you and the exterior world. It can look in both directions. It makes judgments about the nature of reality in relationship to its and your needs. It accepts or does not accept beliefs. It cannot shut out information from your conscious mind, however, but it can refuse to pay attention to it. This does not mean that the information becomes unconscious. It is simply thrown into a corner of the mind, unassimilated, and not organized into the parcel of beliefs upon which you are presently concentrating. It is there if you look for it. It is not invisible, nor do you have to know exactly what you're looking for, which of course would make the situation nearly impossible. All you have to do is to decide to examine the contents of your conscious mind, realizing that it contains treasures that you have overlooked. Another way to do this is to recognize through examination that the physical effects that you meet as data in your conscious mind and the information that formerly seemed unavailable will be obvious. The seemingly invisible ideas that cause your difficulties have quite obvious physical effects. And these will lead you automatically to the conscious area in which the initiating beliefs or ideas reside. Once more, if you become aware of your conscious thoughts, these themselves will give you clues, for they clearly speak your beliefs. If, for example, you have scarcely enough money on which to live, and you examine your thoughts and you find yourself constantly thinking, I can never pay this bill, I never have any luck, I'll always be poor. Or you will find yourself envying those who have more, degrading the value of money perhaps, and saying that those who have it are unhappy or at best spiritually poor. When you find these thoughts in yourself, you may say, rather indignantly, but those things are true. I am poor. I cannot meet my bills, and so forth. In so doing, you see, you accept your belief about reality as a characteristic of reality itself. And so the belief is transparent or invisible to you, but it causes your physical experience. You must change the belief. I will give you methods to allow you to do this. You may follow your thoughts in another area and find yourself thinking that you are having difficulty because you are too sensitive. Finding the thought, you may say, but it is true, I am. I react with such great emotion to small things. But that is a belief, and a limiting one. If you follow your thoughts further, you may find yourself thinking, I am proud of my sensitivity. It sets me apart from the mob. Or, I am too good for this world. These are limiting beliefs. They will distort true reality, your own true reality. These are but a few samples of the ways in which your quite conscious ideas will be invisible to you, while being available all the time and limiting your experience. Now, we've been speaking of the conscious mind, for it is the director of your activities physically. I told you at the beginning of this chapter that it was important to realize the ego's position as the most exterior portion of the inner self, not alienated, but looking outward to physical reality. Using this analogy, portions of the self on the other side of the conscious mind constantly receive telepathic data. Remember, there are no divisions, so the terms used are simply to make the discussion easier. The ego tries to organize all material coming into the conscious mind for its own purposes. The egos are those that have come to the surface at any given time in the self's overall encounter with physical reality. As I said, the ego cannot keep information out of the conscious mind, but it can refuse to focus directly upon it. Now, the telepathic information, using our analogy, comes through deeper portions of the self. These parts have an amazing capacity to receive that some organization is necessary to sift the data. Okay, these parts have such an amazing capacity to receive that some organization is necessary to sift the data. Some is simply not important to you. It concerns people of whom you have no other knowledge. You are a sender and a receiver. Because ideas have an electromagnetic reality, beliefs, because of their intensity, radiate strongly. Due to the organizing structure of your own psychological nature, similar beliefs congregate, and you will readily accept those with which you already agree. Limiting ideas, therefore, predispose you to accept others of a similar nature. Exuberant ideas of freedom, spontaneity, and joy automatically collect others of their kind also. There is a constant interplay between yourself and others in the exchange of ideas, both telepathically and on a conscious level. This interchange follows again your conscious beliefs. It is fashionable in some circles to believe that you react physically to telepathically received messages, despite your conscious beliefs or ideas. I'm going to read that sentence again. It is fashionable in some circles to believe that you react physically to telepathically received messages, despite your conscious beliefs or ideas. This is not the case. You react only to those telepathic messages that fit in with your conscious ideas about yourself and your reality. Let me add that the conscious mind is itself spontaneous. It enjoys playing with its own contents. So I'm not here recommending a type of stern mental discipline in which you examine yourself at every moment. I am telling you about the countering measures that you can take in areas in which you are not pleased with your experience. Now, give us a moment for Willie. In an odd way, he is himself somewhat frightened of his behavior. Rupert has decided to leave the house more often and to be free to go outside whenever he wishes, not to spend so much time inside because of his work. Now, he has set Willie out as a testing device, and the cat does not know exactly what has happened. Willie likes to go out, but he's not used to being out all the time. To an extent, he feels banished. He simply picked up Rupert's feelings, which are now strong, and Rupert's growing vehemence of intent. In a way, these were not directed at the cat. Yet Rupert also knew the cat would pick them up. Willie was always the house cat, you see, and Jane stayed in the house all day writing. So it is the house cat who changes habits rather than Rooney being the other cat. To an extent, you both acquiesced, your doors being left open. You obviously have only to keep them closed. You obviously have only to keep them closed. Do you follow me here? Yes. Now, give us a moment. Rupert is beginning now to itch to go out, but it is the cat who itches. Your Willie is in no danger, but show him your love. Regulate his ingoing and outgoing. Not that Rupert needs to regulate his, but that his distraction or impatience causes the cat to overreact. Now, Rupert's sensing of the channels does not represent a development that has been possible for some time, but it is only now entering his experience. Do remind him of his success in this and in other areas, for the feeling and the reality of success can and will be carried over. I will end our session. I will see to it that I speak about your painting before or after book dictation. I am on Channel 1 this evening. My heartiest regards. We will resume dictation. You will react, therefore, to all the information that you receive according to your conscious beliefs concerning the nature of reality. The deeper portions of the self do not have to take the ego's idea of time into consideration. So these portions of the self also deal with data that would ordinarily escape the ego's perception, perhaps until a certain point of ego time was reached. The ego, which must manipulate most directly with the everyday world, takes time, clock time, quite seriously. Even the ego, however, realizes that to some extent that clock time is a convention, but it does not like such conventions broken. It will often neglect any clairvoyant or precognitive material that comes into the conscious mind from the deeper portions of the self. On occasion, when the ego recognizes that such data can be highly practical, it then becomes more liberal in its recognition of it, but only when such information fits in with its concepts of what is possible and not possible. Now, the ego's concepts are your concepts, since it is part of you. If you dwell on ideas of danger or potential disaster, if you think of the world mainly in terms of your physical survival, and consider all those circumstances that may work against it, then you may find yourself suddenly aware of precognitive dreams that foretell incidents or accidents, earthquakes, robberies, or murders. Your own idea of the perilous nature of existence becomes so strong that the ego allows this data to emerge, even though it is, in quotes, out of time, because your fearful beliefs convince you that you must be on guard. The incidents do not even have to involve you. From all the unconscious telepathic and clairvoyant data available, however, You will be aware of this particular grouping, and it will only serve to reinforce your idea that existence is above all perilous. If this information becomes available in the dream state, you may then say, I am frightened of dreams. My bad dreams so often come true. So you try to inhibit memory of your dreams. Instead, you should examine your conscious beliefs, for they are so strong that they are causing you not only to focus upon calamity in the physical world, but to use your inner abilities to the same end. Telepathic communication is constant. This is usually at an unconscious level, merely because your conscious mind is in a state of becoming. It cannot hold all the information you possess. As an example, if your conscious ideas are relatively positive, you will react to telepathically received information of a similar nature, even if you do so on an unconscious level. As I mentioned earlier, you are also sending your own telepathic thoughts outward. Others will react to those according to their own ideas of reality. A family can constantly reinforce its joy, gaiety, and spontaneity by concentrating on ideas of vitality, strength, and creativity. Or it can let half of its energy slip away by reinforcing resentments, angers, and thoughts of doubt and failure. Either way, the ideas of reality are reinforced, both consciously and unconsciously, not only within the family, but among all those with whom the family comes in contact. You get what you concentrate on. There is no other main rule. It may be easy for you to see beliefs that are invisible to others in themselves. Reading this book, you may be able to point at friends or acquaintances and see clearly that their ideas are invisible beliefs which limit their experience, and yet be blind to your own invisible beliefs, which you take so readily as truth or characteristics of reality. Your sense data, again, will most definitely reinforce your ideas. You will react clairvoyantly and telepathically to inner information at an unconscious level that is once more collected in quotes, under the organization of your quite conscious concepts concerning existence in general, and your own in particular. You are locked into physical situations that are corroborated by the great evidence of sense data. And, of course, it is convincing because it reflects so beautifully, so creatively, and so actively your own ideas and beliefs, whether they are positive or negative. In greater terms, positive and negative have little meaning, for the physical experience is meant as a learning one. But if you are unhappy, then the word negative has a meaning. I expect that by now my readers have at least begun to examine their beliefs and perhaps obtained a glimpse of some invisible ones that had been accepted before as definite aspects of reality. Now, if you are honest with your lists, you will finally come to what I call core beliefs, strong ideas about your own existence. Many other subsidiary beliefs that earlier seemed separate from each other should now appear quite clearly as being offshoots of core beliefs. They seem logical only in their relationship to a core belief. Once the core belief is understood to be a false one, the others will fall away. It is the core belief which is strong enough to so focus your perception that you perceive from the physical world only those events that correlate with it. It is also the strength of the core belief that draws up from the vast bank of inner knowledge only those events that seem to fit within its organization. Now, let me give you a brief example of a core belief. It is a blanket belief. Human nature is inherently evil. This is a core belief. About it will spring events that only serve to reinforce it. Experiences, both personal and global, will come into the perception of a person who holds this belief that will only serve to deepen it further. From all the available physical data of newspapers, television, letters, private communication, he or she will concentrate only upon those issues that prove that point. Suspicion of others will grow, to say nothing about the individual's personal distrust. The belief will reach into the most intimate areas of his or her life. Finally, no evidence will seem to be available to disprove it. This is a sample of an invisible core belief at its worst. A person holding it will not trust a mate, family, friends, colleagues, country, or the world in general. Another more personal core belief: my life is worthless. What I do is meaningless. Now, a person who holds such an idea will ordinarily not recognize it as an invisible belief. Instead, he or she may feel emotionally that life has no meaning, that individual action is meaningless, that death is annihilation, and connected to this will be a conglomeration of subsidiary beliefs that deeply affect the family involved and all those with whom the person comes in contact. In writing down your list of personal beliefs, therefore, leave nothing out. Examine the list as though it belonged to someone else. I did not want to imply that you make a list specifically of negative ideas, however. It is of supreme importance that you recognize the existence of joyful beliefs and take into consideration those elements of your own experience with which you have had success. I want you to capture that feeling of accomplishment and to translate it or transfer it to areas in which you have had difficulty. But you must remember that the ideas exist first and the experience physically follows. You make your own reality. I cannot say this too often. There will be periods where all your beliefs are at an even par, so to speak. They will agree. The ideas may be quite limited. They may be false. They may be based upon premises that are not true. Their vitality and strength, however, will be quite real and seem to bring excellent results. Wealth is everything. Now this idea is far from a truth. The person who accepts it completely, though, will be wealthy and in excellent health, and everything will fit in quite well with his beliefs. Yet the idea is still a belief about reality, and so there will be invisible gulfs in his experience of which he is ignorant. On the outside, the situation will look most advantageous, and while the person seems quite content, beneath there will be the gnawing knowledge of incompletion. On the surface, there will be balance. As your beliefs change, there will be alterations in your experience and behavior and points of stress, creative stress, while you are learning. Our rich man just mentioned may suddenly realize that his belief is limiting, in that he concentrated upon it exclusively so that money and health became his sole aims. The shattered belief may leave him open to illness, which would seem like a negative experience, yet through the illness he may be led to areas of perception that he had earlier denied, and he may be enriched in that particular manner. The shifting of belief may then open him to question his other beliefs, and he realizes that in the area of wealth, for example, he did very well because of his beliefs, but in those others, perhaps deeper experiences opened by his illness, he learns that human experience includes dimensions of reality that had earlier been closed to him, and that these are also easily within his reach and without the illness that originally brought them forth. A new conglomeration of beliefs might emerge. In the meantime, there was stress, but it was creative. Now here's another example. Your conscious thoughts regulate your health. The persistent idea of illness will make you ill. While you believe that you become ill because of viruses, infections, or accidents, then you must go to doctors who operate within that system of belief. And because you believe in their cures, hopefully you will be relieved of your difficulty. Because you do not understand that your thoughts create illness, you will continue to undergo it, however, and new symptoms will appear. You will again return to the doctor when you are in the process of changing beliefs, when you are beginning to realize that your thoughts and feelings cause illness. Then, for a while, you may not know what to do. In the larger context, you realize that the doctor can at best give you temporary relief. Yet, you may not be completely convinced as yet of your own ability to change your thoughts. Or you may be so cowed by their effectiveness that you are frightened. So there is a period of stress in between beliefs, so to speak, while you dispense with one set and are learning to use another. But here you become involved with one of the most meaningful aspects of the nature of personal reality, as you test your thoughts against what seems to be. There may be a time before you learn how to change your thoughts effectively, but you are engaged in a basic, meaningful endeavor. The truth is then that you form your reality directly. You react consciously and unconsciously to your beliefs. You collect from the physical universe and the interior one data that seems to correlate with your beliefs. Believe then that you are being unlimited by nature, born into flesh to materialize as best you can the great joy and spontaneity of your nature. Then he takes a break and he says, "Now, good evening," and we will resume dictation. Core beliefs are those about which you build your life. You are consciously aware of these, though you often do not focus your attention upon them. They become invisible. Therefore, unless you become aware of the contents of your conscious mind, to become acquainted with your own ideas and beliefs, you must walk among them, symbolically speaking, without blinders. You must look through the structures that you have created, the organized ideas upon which you have grouped your experience. To see clearly into your own mind, you must, first of all, unstructure your thoughts. Follow them without judging them, without comparing them to the framework of your beliefs. Structured beliefs collect and hold your experience, packaging it, so to speak. And so when you look at a given experience that seems like another, you put it into the same structured package, often without examination. Such beliefs can hold surprises. When you lift up the cover of one, you may find that it has served to hide valuable information that did not belong there. An artificial grouping of ideas, like paper flour, can be collected about a standard core belief. The core belief, because of its intensity and because of your habits, will often tend to attract to itself others of a like nature. They will hang on. If you are not accustomed to examining your own mind, then you can allow separate growths of this kind to form about a belief until you cannot distinguish one from another. This can develop to such an extent that all your experience is seen only in relationship to this idea growth. Data that seemed unrelated to this core belief is then not assimilated, but thrown into the corners of your mind, unused, and you are denied the value of the information. Separate portions of your mind can contain such chambers of inactive material. This information will not be a part of the organized structure of your usual thoughts. Though the data is consciously available, you can be relatively blind to it. Usually when you look into the conscious mind, you do so for a particular reason, to find some information. But if you have schooled yourself to believe that such data is not consciously available, then it will not occur to you to find it in your conscious mind. If furthermore your conscious data is strongly organized about a core belief, then this automatically will make you blind to experience what is not connected with it. A core belief is invisible only when you think of it as a fact of life and not as a belief about life. Only when you identify with it so completely that you automatically focus your perceptions along that specific line. For example, here is a seemingly very innocent core belief. I am a responsible parent. Now, on the surface, there's nothing wrong with that belief if you hold to it and do not examine it. However, you may find that the word responsible is quite loaded. It collects other ideas that are equally unexamined by you. What is your idea of being responsible? According to your answer, you can discover whether the core belief works to your advantage or not. If responsible means I must be a parent 24 hours a day to the exclusion of everything else, then you may be in difficulty. For that core belief might prevent you from using other abilities that exist quite apart from your parenthood. You may begin to perceive all physical data through the eyes of that core belief alone. You will not look out upon physical reality with the wonder of a child anymore, or the unstructured curiosity of an individual, but always through parental eyes. Thus, you will close yourself off from much physical experience. Now, telepathically, you will also attract unconscious data that fits into this rigid pattern, according to the strength and the stubbornness of this idea and whether or not you are willing to deal with it. You may narrow your life still further, all information of any kind finally becoming relatively invisible to you unless it touches upon your own parental reality. Now, core belief just given, the core belief just given, is of one kind. You may hold some basic assumptions that are also core beliefs. To you, they seem to be definitions. They are so a part of you that you take them for granted. Your idea of time is one. You may enjoy manipulating thoughts of time in your mind. You may find yourself thinking that time is basically different from your experience of it. But fundamentally, you believe that you exist in the hours and the years, that the weeks come at you one at a time, that you are caught in the onrush of the seasons. Naturally, your physical experience reinforces this belief. You structure your perception, therefore, in terms of the lapses that seem to happen between events. This in itself forces you to concentrate your attention in one direction only and discourages you from perceiving the events in your life in other fashions. You may occasionally employ the association of ideas, one thought leading easily to another. When you do this, you often perceive new insights. As the events fall apart from time continuity in your mind, they seem to take on fresh vitality. You have unstructured them, you see, from the usual organization. As you apprehend them through association, you come quite close to examining the contents of your mind in a free fashion. But you drop the time concept and then but if you drop the time concept and then view the conscious content of your mind through other core ideas, you are still structuring. I'm not saying that you should never organize these contents. I am saying that you must become aware of your own structures. Build them up or tear them down, but do not allow yourself to become blind to the furniture of your own mind. You can stub your toe as easily on a misplaced idea as you can on an old chair. It will help you, in fact, if you think of your own beliefs as furniture that can be rearranged, changed, renewed, completely discarded or replaced. Your ideas are yours. They should not control you, and it's up to you to accept those that you choose to accept. Imagine yourself then rearranging this furniture. Images of particular pieces will come clearly to you. Ask yourself what ideas these pieces represent. See how well the tables fit together. Open up the drawers inside. There will be no mystery. You know what your own beliefs are. You will see the groupings. but it's up to you to look inside your own mind and to use the images in your own way. Throw out ideas that do not suit you. If you read this, find such an idea in yourself and then say, no. If you read this, find such an idea in yourself and then say, I cannot throw this idea away. Then you must realize that your inner remark is in itself a belief. You can indeed throw the idea away. The second one as easily as the first. You are not powerless before ideas. Using this analogy, you will certainly find some furniture that you did not expect. Do not simply look in the center of your inner room of consciousness. And make sure that you are on guard against the certain invisibility that was mentioned earlier, where an idea quite available appears to be part of reality instead. The structuring of beliefs is done in a highly characteristic yet individual manner. So you will find patterns that exist between various groupings, and one can lead you to another. The idea of being the responsible parent, for example, may lead quite easily to other psychic structures involving responsibility, so that the data is accepted on its own value. You may even think that it's wrong to view any situation except through your parental status. The belief in guilt, therefore, would be a cementing structure that would hold together other similar core beliefs and add to their strength. You must understand that these are not simply dead ideas like debris within your mind. They are psychic matter. In a sense, then, they are alive. They group themselves like cells, protecting their own validity and identity. You feed them, figuratively speaking, with like ideas. When you examine one such belief, then you obviously threaten the integrity of the structure. And so there are ways of inserting new supports, so to speak, methods to tide you over. The whole core belief need not fall down upon you as you examine its basis. Now, I will stop at that for now and take a break. You will be finished with this chapter shortly, and then we will begin the next. I'm just looking here for where he continues. All right, here it is. Give us a moment then. Imagination also plays an important part in your subjective life, as it gives mobility to your beliefs. It is one of the motivating agencies that helps transform your beliefs into physical experience. It is vital, therefore, that you understand the interrelationship between ideas and imagination in order to dislodge unsuitable beliefs and establish new ones. You must learn to use your imagination to move concepts in and out of your mind. The proper use of imagination can then propel ideas in the directions you desire. And this concludes chapter 3. And now I'll go back and read all the inserts that Rob put into this chapter. And I find them quite interesting, but if you don't, you can just skip them and go on to the next chapter. So Seth suggests that they need a break. And they say, yes, I guess so. And he says, we will then, indeed. And they say, thank you. Again, Jane had been really under. She didn't remember the material, and she was amazed that an hour had passed. I told her that I had taken the break because I was still worried about Willie. Of course, this is Rob speaking here. Jane said she believed that Seth could do 3 books at once, a chapter at a time on each, with no confusion among them. Right now, I feel that this whole book's just here, ready to be given for the writing down. Her very active dream life has evidently included a lot of preparation for it, she added, but I didn't ask her any questions that might open up more channels. Not since the sessions started in 1963 have I felt that Seth's material was so richly available. I wasn't able to be that open before this. I couldn't accept a lot of what was right there because it didn't fit in with my beliefs. Jane pointed to her left. Now I could get stuff on archaeology of all things. Wild. She had doubts, though, about her own ability to come through with the very technical data for the young scientist who had called her before the last session. She felt somewhat remote from his questions while she was so involved in producing this book. Now, Seth speaks for a while, and then we go back to the comments here. Rob says, the furnace knocked out in last June's flood hasn't been repaired yet because of a shortage of skilled workers in the area. Everything in the house is damp and swollen. Doors especially won't work easily, if at all. So we've been taking the easy way out. After coming out of trance, Jane attempted to describe a manifestation which, though invisible, was hovering before us, now like a big oval type of thing. It was made up of a group of energies that could represent a personality, like Seth, she said. Yet it was nameless. It was just there, and gave her no feeling particularly that it was going to be of assistance. Jane had trouble being precise about the effect and her feelings in connection with it, and I had difficulty translating her narrative into written words. I mention it here in case something develops. She's had similar perceptions occasionally before. By now, the members of ESP class are staying on top of each session for the book, implementing the material before the chapters are finished. So are Jane and I. It looks like all of us will grow as the book does. A note added a few days later. This session was held on Wednesday. We had guests the following Friday evening, and as Jane described the multiple channel effects to them, she realized that she was tuning into some of Seth's backlog of data about peer groups and the need to conform. Seth hadn't actually given us the material during Wednesday's session, nor did he now. Instead, Jane verbalized it on her own to some extent. The next morning I asked her to note down what she remembered of it. Telling Rob and our friends about the channels that I became aware of in the last session, Jane wrote, I suddenly began drawing upon one with the information about conformity and the need for individual expression. I realized that Seth had a great amount of information gathered, and there, including the biological foundations of both characteristics. Take the amoeba, a one-celled microscopic animal, for instance. I knew that the protoplasm in the amoeba, the essential living matter, represents the individual needing to go out. The individual needing to go out quality. Okay, so needing to go out, those 4 words are all hyphenated together. Okay, so let me read the sentence again. I knew that the protoplasm of the amoeba, the essential living matter, represents the individual needing to go out quality. Yet, the protoplasm must conform to its environment. In this case, the amoeba's body, which can only move as a unit when directed by the individualistic need to react to stimuli. The protoplasm, while reacting on its own, has to take the cell form into consideration. This ensures the integrity of the whole unit. To move the protoplasm must necessarily move the whole thing. This is just a sample of the implications called up by Rob's talk about peer groups in the session on Wednesday. The material itself has much more available on biological aspects, plus cultural and historical ones. It could also discuss the same question from the view of the growth of the human body and the development, say, of cancer cells that break out of a conforming pattern and superimpose a new one on their own on the unit structure. There, I just got that last sentence as I finished this account. That idea is something new for me too. While we were eating breakfast this morning, Jane and I heard a peculiar, multiple barking sound that came from the sky. I leaned out of the window just in time to see a large formation of geese fly over, obviously southbound for winter. They flew low, I thought, their formation unbalanced. One tail of their inverted V was much longer than the other. Inside the V, as though being protected, flew a small group that was not information. That was not in formation. Okay, there's a typo here because it's written as information, but it's in formation. Okay. I found the spectacle strangely moving, and so did Jane. We marveled at the inherent order of the migration, the loud honking that so proudly demonstrated its tightness. Others we saw were impressed too. Men doing flood repair work in a downstairs apartment came outside to stand in the driveway staring skyward. I took the flight as another sign of nature's amazing variety and vitality, a strong reminder of values I was afraid we humans often denigrated. Jane's delivery as Seth was fast from the beginning of the session. I'm just looking here for the next little part. Okay. Jane's pace had been consistently faster than in previous sessions of the book. Break was short, beginning at 10:45. Seth gave several pages of material for me. I'd hardly expected it. And then he wound up the session at 11:20 p.m. with this comment. Now tell Rupert, there will be schools of thought built from core beliefs. Tell him that. The session was witnessed by the writer Richard Bach and his editor Eleanor Freed. They flew to Elmira yesterday after poor weather had delayed their schedule on Tuesday in time for the ESP class. Dick had also visited us late August, when Seth had chapter 1 of this book underway. Jane had delivered a rather lengthy but informal session for our guests last night as we lingered around the supper table after a late meal. Dick recorded it and is to send us a transcript, so later we'll be able to add a few excerpts from that material to the session. Earlier this evening, Jane had sung quite spontaneously in Sumari, but her manner became more deliberate as she now began speaking for Seth. And I'll link to some Sumari in case you're interested at the end of this audio. Okay, so here's another session. So Seth says, I will stop at that now and take a break. We will be finished with this chapter shortly, and then we'll begin the next. And then he says to Eleanor and Dick, I would speak faster for you, but we need the notes for the book. Now Rob's speaking again. Jane's trance has been good. We were pleased that others had been present during some book dictation. The rest of the session was given over to our guests. Seth's manner became more jovial, and his pace speeded up considerably. Some notes were added later. Dick Bach felt that he didn't really write Seagull himself. By now, the story of that book's conception is well known. Late one night in 1959. Oh, so sorry. I couldn't suppress that sneeze. Okay. Late one night in 1959, Dick was walking beside a canal near a West Coast beach when he heard a voice say, Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Jonathan Livingston Seagull. No one else was around. He was astonished. He was even more so on his return home. The voice initiated images that gave him the bulk of the book in three-dimensional form. Then it stopped. On his own, Dick tried unsuccessfully to finish the manuscript. Nothing happened until one day, 8 years later, when he suddenly awakened to hear the voice again, and with it came the rest of the book. Who wrote it? Dick didn't claim authorship. He came across the Seth material, and he saw similarities in Jane's and his experiences, and came here to see if she or Seth could explain the phenomenon. There are points of correlation, of course, only Jane is presented not with just a voice, but with an entire personality. Seth, who then writes the books, while she is in an altered state of consciousness. So she and Dick were highly interested in what Seth would say. Besides this, Jane's novel, The Education of Oversoul 7, was written under similar and yet different circumstances. She describes the processes involved in her introduction, along with the creation of some of her poetry. To Jane, these states are all aspects of the same kind of highly accelerated creativity that finally goes beyond itself into levels or aspects of reality that we don't clearly understand yet. The whole question is also relevant in cases involving automatic writing, painting, singing, musical composition, etc. Now, here are some near verbatim quotes from the information Seth gave Dick. In this book, there are many examples of various kinds of altered states of consciousness on Jane's part. In addition to Seth's volume, these sometimes resulted in very creative products of her own. Some of the psychic experiences connected with her book on poetry, Dialogues of the Soul and Mortal Self in Time, which she began in November 1972, are described in the 639th session in Chapter 10 and in the 653rd session in Chapter 13. We go into those involved with the writing of her long poem, Dialogues of the Speakers, on April 2nd, 1973. Bach and Company on the evening of September 27, 1972. Information does not exist by itself. Connected with it is the consciousness of all those who understand it, perceive it, or organize it. Or originate it. Sorry, I'm going to read that sentence again. Information does not exist by itself. Connected with it is the consciousness of all those who understand it, perceive it, or originate it. So there are no records in terms of objective, forever available banks of information into which you tune. Instead, the consciousness that held or holds or will hold the information attracts it like a magnet. The information itself wants to move toward consciousness. It is not dead or inert. It is not something you grab for. It is also something that wants to be grabbed, and so it gravitates to those who seek it. Your consciousness attracts the consciousness that is already connected with the material. That is one of my goodies for the evening. Your consciousness attracts the consciousness that is already connected with the material. Information then becomes new and is reborn again. And is reborn as it is interpreted through a new consciousness, as Seagull was. The inner portion of your being, using those abilities that have always been yours, interpreted the information through the kaleidoscope of your own being, using the best portions of yourself, producing then a brilliant truth in new clothes, but in clothes that no one could have given it but yourself. Now, I will tell you, if you assign the authorship of Seagull to another, then you deny the uniqueness of your own inner self. The truth came to you and was given to you, but the originality and the uniqueness was provided by your own inner being, which may now be so separated from your conscious self that it seems to be apart from it. So other things were also involved, not only the birth of a book, but the emergence of the inner self through art into the physical universe. Now part of the focus and the strength comes from those two births, and the intensity behind them is also the reason why the book's nativity strikes the world as strongly as it does. The two are merged in the book. You are looking for the author of Seagull, and I tell you, I am looking at him. He may not have the face that you see when you look in the mirror, simply because you cannot see your true identity in a mirror. But I am looking at all that is visible of the author of Seagull, and you should know him best of all. And I will tell you, through the years, how to become acquainted with him, and more on speaking terms. Rupert already has a head start on this, so I'm not spoiling his fun. There are indeed aspects of your own consciousness that operate in completely different environments. Environments, for example, that are not physical. There are aspects of you, therefore, that know many other kinds of information than those available to you at the conscious level now. Note that Seth endorsed Jane's theory of aspects. She began a book on the subject. In it, she will explore, among other things, the nature, the validity, the sources of such personalities as Seth, and the intrusion of intuitional or revelatory material. Once again, see her introduction. Now, this is Rob speaking again. My mother lives with my brother and his family in a small community in upstate New York near Rochester. And Jane and I had spent the weekend visiting one and all. During our drive back to Elmira this morning, Jane said, "Somebody's working on Seth's book, I can tell you that. I keep getting snatches of it. It's about imagination and beliefs, I think, and how they interact. Only there's a lot more to it." "Well," she added, pleased, "it's nice to know that the work's being done." And that concludes chapter 3. I hope you enjoyed it. And so sorry about the sneeze and also the choppiness of it. Because when Rob puts sections into the main writing of the chapter, there's a little section here and a little section there. Sometimes it's relevant to what Seth's saying, sometimes not, So, well, I did my best reading it. Sorry. Sorry if it's a bit choppy. But there you go. I enjoyed it. Now, the next chapter is chapter 4. And it will be about imagination and your beliefs. And a few words about the origin of your beliefs. Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to that. This book is marvelous, so I hope you're enjoying it. And till soon.